6:30. Good evening. We're going to call the meeting to order at this time, 6:30. The City Council of McLendon-Chisholm, Texas reserves the right to convene into executive session at any time during the course of this meeting to discuss any of the matters listed as authorized by Texas Government Code Chapter 551. So at this time, we will be in executive session, 6:30. It is 7 o'clock and we are back from executive session. At this time, Dan, would you say our invocation, please, sir?
If we can bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, so very much for providing this opportunity every other week for us to get together and discuss the issues that confront our city. Bless us continually during this discussion. Let your will be done. Provide us with grace at all times. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Jerry, will you lead us in our pledges?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. At this time, we are going to have a proclamation. So I will turn the microphone around and come out front of the dais. 1 second. All right, so proclamation. Whereas September 17th, 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is the fitting and proper to accord official recognition to the magnificent document, the Constitution of the United States, and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas the tradition of celebrating the Constitution was started by the daughters of the American Revolution by petitioning Congress to set aside September 17th through the 23rd annually to be dedicated for the observance of Constitution Week. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America proclaiming the week beginning September 17 and ending September 23rd of each year as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideas of the framers of the Constitution. Whereas now, therefore, I, Brian McNeil, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of McLendon-Chisholm in the state of Texas, do hereby proclaim September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week in McLendon-Chisholm, Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Oh, you're good?
Y'all got out good.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Do you want to keep this or would you?
Nope, that is yours. That is
I
yours.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Conrad, did you give me the picture for the, you have it? Okay, so we're going to be presenting some photo contest winners from the photo contest that we had. And I believe our first place winner is not present. Is that correct, Conrad? Christine New? Oh. So the first place winner is not here, but this was the picture. If anyone would like to see it, it's up top so you can see it. But this was the picture that won first place. And second place was by Lori Moody. And so she is here, so I will come around front and present her with her second place check for the photo contest. Clearly, I should have done a photo. I might have been able to get paid something. Thank you, Lori, for participating in that, and Christine New is not here, but we thank her as well. So that brings us to rules of decorum, which we seem to say the same thing every week. Let's just be kind to one another. And we will now go to citizens' comments. I have David Black first.
David Black at 1419 Sienna Lane in McLendon-Chisholm. Just not on the agenda, just gung-ho with the PA system getting up and running would be great. It sort of contributes to transparency, which I guess is sort of the idea. And it's been tough. I tried to follow the home rule discussions. The guys were pretty good at passing the one mic they had around the tables. But toward the end, people are getting tired, and at the end of the conversation, the mics are sitting on the tables and they're talking, and you don't hear anything. But it's a good thing to have the PA system. But it was working. Maybe more pass around mics or something. The budget, just technicality. Is the fiscal year 24 amended budget sort of the same as the fiscal year 25? And the reason I ask is in the timeline, the last thing approved is the fiscal year 24 amended budget. And then there's nothing after that. So I don't know if the fiscal year 25 is some known date or not. But that assumes the tax rate, I assume, is approved, and they wait on that. I had a profit question. The sewer utility revenue is nearly $1 million, and the sewer operations and maintenance is about $733,000. So that's like a profit of $263,000, which is great, 36%. To my knowledge, the sewer is only in one place, Sonoma Verde. And so I was wondering, we still have these bad roads, Edwards and Lee. Is that profit for Sonoma Verde infrastructure, or I assume it goes to the whole city? But just wondering if it could be used to help Sonoma Verde's road problem, especially Edwards. And then the letter of notice, I saw the mayor's video, which was very good. I was in agreement with all that. But I'm just still not sure exactly why the letter would be needed. I'm thinking RCH is a business and they deal with their bank. Banks exercise due diligence regarding collateral and other aspects of their business. And there are laws. I mean, if there's a fraud committed, you go to jail. So RCH has been going about its business and accomplishing great strides in the last year. The city and RCH have an open and productive relationship. So I don't really believe there's a requirement or a need for this proposed notice. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Next up is going to be Tom Hertz.
Oh, okay, I saw the red light, I thought it was on. Okay. You notice I wear these things. I can't hear much, so I usually just scream a lot. Okay. So I found out that it's kind of rough what Texas does, but they do some good things. There is a truth in taxation requirement. It's a concept embodied in the Texas Constitution that requires local taxing units, like you, to make taxpayers aware of tax rate proposals and to afford taxpayers the opportunity to limit the increases. The reality for taxpayers is, even if the city council drops the rate, you got the people up on Goliad up there that keep raising the property assessors, so a tax rate dropping doesn't mean we're paying less taxes. Well, like if you look at the data for McLendon-Chisholm, 5 years ago, the rate was about 15 cents per $100. Now, you're proposing 0.096. That's like, oh, hey, that's about a 33% decrease. They're good guys. But you got to look at something else. That doesn't say anything about how much you really pay. What it is where is it? The Texas Comptroller and the Truth in Taxation came up with there's only one tax rate you can possibly adopt that would keep our taxes at the same amount. So in other words, if you adopt this no new revenue rate, that means no matter what they did, your taxes stay the same. Now, what you are proposing, you're allowed to take the existing rate and 3.5% more. That's how you avoid having to go to the taxpayers. Well, I looked at
Tom, you got
the
about,
numbers.
Tom,
You
you
see
got
this blue stuff here?
about 30 seconds, and then
Okay.
the time's up.
All right. I got it out of here. My first degree is math. The tax rate you're proposing is 0.096256. The no new tax rate is 0.074266. You divide one by the other, you get 1.296. That says if we adopt what you're saying, our taxes are going to go up 29.6%. Now, that's what the numbers say right out of your own paper. I think you ought to think about it, and
Okay, thank you, Tom.
you're saying this is also the time you're going to vote for it? I was here last time.
Tom,
You didn't really talk about it. Okay.
thank you.
I'm over.
I
But
appreciate it, sir.
I feel very strongly that I don't want 30% tax increase.
Next up is going to be Madeline Hall. Is it Madeline?
Madeline.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Madeline Hall. I live at 402 Cattle Barren Drive here in McLendon. We've come to these meetings in the past to discuss the fact that there needs to be a physical barrier between the commercial developments and our residential homes that we raise kids in. In this case, we understand the proposal to allow an O'Reilly's water drainage into our neighborhood. As someone who lives here, I can tell you that such a plan would be short-sighted and reckless. The drains in front of our house back up with any amount of rain currently. So this proposal would be overburdening and to an already delicate drainage system and likely flood our home. The proposal to drain water into our neighborhood is not a safe or viable option, especially as we cannot get flood insurance in this area, as you guys know. The City Council has approved the commercial development in front of our residential house. I understand this has already been approved, but there are outstanding details left to be approved, and these final details should be scrutinized with hawk eyes as they walk a very fine line. In fact, the line is about the width of a curb because that's all that's separating my homestead from a commercial development. In this town, we hear people speak too often about how they are not responsible for decisions that have been made, rather than hearing about how someone is not to blame. I encourage you to step up, take responsibility for finding creative solutions, righting wrongs, and protecting the people and families that live here. This situation needs to be viewed as how can I be the hero rather than how can I avoid taking responsibility. I encourage you to review this as if your kids were playing in my front yard and set a standard that these commercial developments are not to enter our residential neighborhood and my front yard, starting with not allowing the O'Reilly's water drainage into my neighborhood and the drain in front of my front yard. Okay.
Thank you, Madeline. Caleb Freeland?
Good evening, Council. My name is Caleb Freeland. First of all, I'm speaking as a representative for O'Reilly Auto Parts, and I'm requesting that item 1525 be postponed to the next City Council meeting on September 24th for vote.
Those are pages. That's item
sorry.
11.2.
Thank you, sir. And while I'm up here, I would like to address concerns regarding drainage. I'm a civil engineer on the project. So O'Reilly has provided city staff and the city engineer with a plan for a temporary detention basin. O'Reilly was under the impression that the city engineer and everybody had approved the basin, but now it sounds like they're needing additional time to review it. I've personally met with the city engineer and with city staff, so it sounds like it's very close, but we want to be above board and do everything in due order. So we are hopeful that we can receive approval at the next meeting, but we would just want to make sure everybody's on board.
Hey, Mayor, although we can't respond to them during citizen comments, I believe Conrad, I know I do have some more to add when we get to that item if you want.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, we can't unfortunately respond. We got the request, but we.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Trudy Wesner?
Good evening, gentlemen. Mine isn't on anything specific, just a couple of questions that I've got that I'm hoping that you guys are looking into, and I'm sure you are, but I just kind of want to throw it out there just so it's in the light. And it has to do with RCH, of course, and the Sonoma Verde. My questions are, do we have paperwork on their CCN, territory? I personally haven't seen any. I know that RCH has told us they have no paperwork whatsoever left. So I'm assuming it's up to us to have that paperwork. Should there be some type of an agreement with RCH on whether or not there's a CCN over Sonoma Verde? And if there's not a CCN over Sonoma Verde, my couple of questions would be, is there an ability, kind of like we do trash, to go for the best quality and pricing on the water divisions that are out there for Sonoma Verde? Because if I was a Sonoma Verde resident, I definitely wouldn't want to pay more money for water if there's no CCN over it, but the city's forcing them to, because we know that RCH is going to be raising prices due to all the construction that they're going to be. That's just common sense, But if I were Sonoma Verde, I wouldn't want to be shoved into that. But that's just me, and I'm just asking these questions. And if there is paperwork, then half of my questions are null and void. But if there's not, if I were Sonoma Verde, I would be asking those questions. Is if there's not, I don't want to pay more money with the rest of RCH if I don't have to. My other question is that if RCH, if somehow RCH relinquishes their area, there will be more water for the rest of their territory. And we can do this, and it wins for everybody. It's not a city thing, it's not an RCH thing. It is better for McLendon-Chisholm because, or at least for the RCH members. I personally I'm in High Point, and I'm kind of wondering if there's any way, I don't know how all of it works, but can I not have can I not have High Point? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just saying, I don't want any more of my trees or foundation. I've got cracks now that I didn't have last year. We're going to have another year of this. So I'm just looking for a solution, and that's all I'm looking for. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just trying to look for a solution, and I know you guys know much more than I do.
You know, Brett.
Okay. Anyway, so sorry, but those are just things that I would like for you guys to question.
Thanks, Trudy. Anthony Crawford.
Anthony Crawford, 104 Lavender Place here in McLendon. I just wanted to take the time to thank Councilmember Tucker for putting on the agenda something that needs to be done by this council. I know that RCH has made great strides. They've done really good. But I can tell you that the economic situation we're in right now, something can go south real quick. And so I think protecting our city from something as simple as just saying, hey, these assets do not belong. They belong to the city of McLendon-Chisholm. There's nothing wrong with that. And I disagree with what was put on social media. I think that's what created the fervor about it. I think the city protecting us as citizens in case something happens in the business climate right now and it goes south. I don't want to be encumbered with a loan as a citizen. And just simply by putting something in there in writing and stuff is something that y'all should do as a city council in protecting our assets. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I always ask if there's anybody who didn't turn in a sheet in time that wants to speak. If not, I will close citizens' comments at 7:23. And we will move on to, there was no action in executive session. Consent agenda. Are there any items on consent agenda that need to be pulled, council?
Yeah, move item number, I think it was 10.4, if I can remember, 10.4 to the regular agenda.
Okay, we will remove 10.4. I'll take a motion to approve the rest of the items on consent agenda at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve items 10.2, 10.3, 10.5 at this point in time on the consent agenda. 10.1 also. Sorry.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, show that passed minus 10.4 being pulled. And we will go ahead and discuss, I'm going to move some stuff around. I apologize. I'm going to move 11.6 to the front so we can just get that out of the way. So 11.6, Angela. 10.4 will move to the end. Yeah. So 11.6 will be one. Go ahead, Angela.
11.6, discuss and consider approval of legal staff preparing a letter on notice to RCH, WSC, and any and all of its banks, lenders, creditors, loan providers of like agents, to put them on notice that all water-related infrastructure within any and all phases of Sonoma Verde is solely the property of the city of McLendon-Chisholm and is not being used to serve directly or indirectly as collateral or as security interest for any purpose that could or would promote the benefit of RCH WSC.
I'll entertain a motion on 11.6.
Make a motion to approve preparation of a letter by staff regarding RCH.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll always start at the end, so Mike.
But the concern is with this is we have very little information about what RCH is doing as far as obtaining a loan for installation of a take point and all the related infrastructure. What information we do have from RCH is that they indicated that they were going to collateralize the revenues as a means by which to obtain that loan. Talking to our legal staff, there was concern that if there's a loan that is granted that's a federally approved loan, that might restrict our ability to control or to do anything with Sonoma Verde going forward in the future. And so this is what we want to do, is try to make sure everyone's aware of the fact that we don't want any revenue or the property collateralized as a means by which to secure a loan. And that's really what the issue is. I mean, where this all goes is RCH has had trouble in the past, not through any fault of the current board, but the past board. And as a consequence, it has no business records, it has problems with tax records, and so they can't go to an ordinary bank, is my understanding, to get loans, and so they're going to this bank called CoBank that works with co-ops. And this is a bank that Mr. Naylor does a lot of work with, and rightfully so, with his other business. And so he has a good relationship with CoBank. And what CoBank does, from our understanding, is bundle these loans together and then submit them for possible inclusion for a federal loan. And if the federal loan is approved, then that's going to limit our ability to do things with RCH in the future, with Sonoma Verde in the future. And talking to counsel, that oftentimes there's a lot of litigation associated with these types of loans because with municipalities, in that they seek to do something with respect to some property that they have, and then they're stopped from doing so because there's encroachment on property that now has a federal loan on it. And so that's really what this is about. And I think what we might be able to do here is kind of narrow and target any disclosures that have been made with any loans. I think trying to get some more information would be helpful with respect to this. And then another concern that arose in Mr. Brewer mentioned is that we may be too late on all of this because, and it hadn't occurred to me that there was a prior loan that was issued to RCH for some meters. And is that correct, that there's a USDA loan? We don't know. And so that may be another issue we have to address. And we don't want to create conflict. We don't want to do anything that's going to negatively impact RCH. We're merely here to protect the rights and property of Sonoma Verde residents and the city. And this won't affect the contract, the licensing agreement to supply water, RCH to supply water to Sonoma Verde. We just don't want to have a security interest placed on RCA, on Sonoma Verde, that may restrict our future, whatever we want to do with it. And that's kind of where this goes. So that's kind of, my thoughts on this. And Dan, I know we're going down the road, but I know Dan was kind of working on it. Did I miss anything?
Just a little bit of an overview. Excellent presentation. I appreciate your jumping in and taking care of it. But I'll defer to Jerry. Jerry? Okay, just to go back a little bit and maybe to respond to Trudy, indirectly here, but directly, is that Sonoma Verde is a particular interesting part of the city where RCH's CCN does not apply. So a CCN basically is an area that the Texas state of Texas provides for individual water supply companies to provide services for those individuals that live within that confine, and it's basically it's monopoly. Sonoma Verde is not included in their CCN. It is a part of the city that the city itself owns the infrastructure there, the pipes, the storage, any kind of pumps. So it owns all that infrastructure. And through a contract with RCH that was formulated back in 2014, we contracted with them to provide water for the residents using our pipes. And so, in essence, we control what's going on over in Sonoma Verde. And to that point, what we're looking at here is saying to RCH is that these are our assets. We don't want these to be collateralized through any loan that you may be applying through. Is that kind of an adverse approach to RCH? In my mind, I don't think it is. We're just expressing our authority that's embedded in a contract and in the fact that those assets belong to us and they can't be utilized. And actually, RCH provided us with a letter last Friday, and they themselves testified to the fact that they recognize that those assets are indeed the city's. And so I think there's kind of a mutual agreement that those assets belong to the city, and so they can't be collateralized. And so I don't see this as being problematic in terms of passing a resolution, bring it to the light of the public, and have them understand that indeed we're trying to protect the assets that belong to the city, but through the city, the citizens. So I just don't see any adversity here.
Councilmember Brewer?
I guess I would question why can any city, let's just take McLendon-Chisholm, can any city tell a bank who's giving a loan to a business not to do it based on a certain criteria? Has there been a precedent for that?
If you're asking the question, I don't think we're telling any bank that they can't do anything. We're just notifying to the point that of the fact that this is an asset. It's like, and we've discussed this in the past, it's like your neighbor taking out a loan for their property and using your property as collateral. I mean, in that sense, we feel strongly about any of our property owned by the city being collateralized through a loan, for a loan, through another entity. And that's a simple declaration. So we're not telling a bank they can't do what they can and can't do. We're just saying, hey, if there's a loan application and if there's any inclusion of Sonoma Verde and its infrastructure as part of a suggestion that that's a collateral, here's edification on that point. And that's, I think, all we're saying.
Well, we're talking about the revenues. I mean, RCH has already said the infrastructure is not theirs. They said it's the city's. So we're just talking about the revenues that are generated from the service that they provide in that area.
And as part of an agreement, we have a contract with RCH that's been in force since 2014. That's a negotiable contract. And it's up to the city council to review that at some point in time, perhaps, and consider whether we're going to stay with RCH or not. I mean, that's really, and they should be telling their lender that. Thus far, for 10 years, they've been providing adequate service, but of late, not so much adequate service. And so that's always maybe a bone of contention in the future. So that's for RCH to provide that information to any lender and say, hey, here's the contract we have, and the lender will make that decision based on historical observation, I assume, and whatever other criteria they use to determine approval of a loan.
And are we just talking about Cobain or any other lenders as well that we're going to be going and sending a letter to?
In the instance of CoBank, I mean, obviously, we explored this bank and found out that most of its loans, or many of its loans, are, as Michael said earlier, are packaged up and funded by USDA. And there are certain conditions where the USDA, if they grant a loan, will literally encumber a property like this over in Sonoma Verde and isolate that, and it's not accessible from our standpoint because federal law will act supreme over local municipal law and state law, and they'll encumber that for the next 20 to 30 years, the length of the loan. So we're trying to send a message, send a notice saying, hey, if you're going to lend to RCH, go ahead and lend to them. However, please don't consider Sonoma Verde as collateral for that loan.
I'm thinking if it's successful and the bank says we're not going to consider that as part of the loan, but the loan is, as a result, much lower, that would, in my mind, impede their ability to get to the water line in the next 18 months or whenever that is. I have some concerns about that because I don't live in Sonoma Verde, right? And a year and a half is way too long for me. But I'm waiting 3 years or 4 years because we're trying to make a point with Sonoma Verde is troubling me.
No, I mean, I understand Jerry's point, and I think that that is really what the issue here is. But let's take that first step down the slippery slope. They get the full $20 million, and then they don't complete all of this for whatever reason, because they're going to need about $15 million more. Now, the members of RCH are now responsible for a $20 million loan. That's about $7,000 a hookup if there are 28 hookups. And now everybody's on the hook for taking care of that if it doesn't get done. But if it does get done, then and to Trudy's point, is that now it gets done, they're completed, they've got it all done, and now there's a cost associated with that water. You and I don't live over in Sonoma Verde. I'm an RCH member. I'm going to get stuck with it. I understand it. But so is the folks over at Sonoma Verde. If there's an alternative water source that's cheaper for those folks, and we wanted to go down that road to give them more affordable water, we'd be precluded from doing that. That's the concern with it all. And so what are the additional costs going to be? That's unclear. And that's where we are at. And there's a lot of uncertainty about all of this. And what we are trying to do is preserve the flexibility to allow future city councils to do what is in the best interest, in their opinion, of the citizens that reside in Sonoma Verde in the future. And so there's risks on both sides of this equation, and what we are trying to do is do what we can do to mitigate it. And just sitting here listening to this discussion, there may be another alternative, which would be an agreement with RCH not to use those revenues for any submission, so that we would not have to bother any lending bank for that. And I don't know if that's something that's even possible to do, but I think it would be far less disruptive of, based on the concerns that have been raised by RCH that don't, with the banks and everything. And so there may be other ways to achieve the same objective but less intrusive, hopefully less, less conflict or apparent conflict. I just didn't really see this as being a big deal because I just view it as part of doing due diligence to preserve your assets and flexibility in the future. And there's a number of things that are at issue here, and trying to figure out what's the best way to achieve these objectives and mitigate the risk, preserve the flexibility, not impede RCH from its objectives, because it's in a perfect world. I would like to see multiple water suppliers for the city of McLendon-Chisholm, so we're not beholden to one, and figuring out a way where we can distribute it and give people some flexibility to achieve those objectives. But, that's kind of where we're at today. Anyways, that's for what it's worth. Anyways.
Councilmember Day.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for this. It's very interesting. It's an interesting conversation. And thank you for keeping it civil. Like, water doesn't always make people real happy in this town. So I appreciate that. I appreciate it deeply. The question I have is more along the lines of what do we know versus what we don't know. I went through the letter that was sent by RCH that I received, I think on Monday or something like that. Naming the bank, I went ahead and hit Google and figured out a little bit what we know about CoBank, and if it is in fact a USDA loan, there is in fact guiding. There are laws under the U.S. Code that govern this, and some of these questions came up right away, which is one of the issues is if they are going to securitize this with a USDA loan, apparently they are required to notify an intention to apply for 90 days prior to the actual filing of the application. And to my knowledge, I haven't seen anything, so I was going to ask the Water Committee who's here, have they seen anything that demonstrates either the intention to apply for 90 days for a federal loan and or an actual application, and in that application, if it exists, what is being pledged as security, or do we know any of that stuff?
Well, this is one of my strong points, that I'm ignorant of all of that.
The reason, just as a side note, I went through all of their agendas and I didn't see anything mentioning CoBank. I didn't see anything about them pursuing this, and so, I mean, it's kind of, we're applying for a CoBank loan that might be securitized by a federal agency, and that federal agency will have legal supremacy over any decisions taken by this group.
Yeah.
Seems to be what you guys are looking at, right?
Yeah. Let me clarify. We have very limited information, and I think that it could be improved, I think, with some questions to RCH, but I don't have anything other than what Mr. Naylor had told, I think it was at the RCH meeting where they were talking about securitizing the revenue and using that as collateral. And then Mr. Naylor saying that they've done some work with CoBank. I think that was an HOA meeting here. And so that's about all I know on it. I mean, unless anybody else knows anything more, I mean.
I haven't seen any indication that RCH has made any announcement on that end. However, I haven't inquired as to CoBank, perhaps as the lender, making that announcement, and we would never be apprised of it. However, I actually did a FOIA request at this point in time regarding RCH working with CoBank and applying for any kind of loan through the USDA. And I did through the USDA and found that, according to my research, that they have not, there's no indication that there's been an application for it. That's all the information I have at this point.
Does anybody else on the panel have any information about whether or not an application has been filed and that there's been a pledge for collateral? I mean, other than the fact that this came, my assumption is that the collateral argument or discussion came from a public discussion from an RCH meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was not really much of a discussion. It was, I think, a one-sentence acknowledgement. And so there was, somebody asked about it, and that was the response, and that's all it was stated. So I agree, it's speculation on my part, based upon information that's been provided.
So this is really a kind of a preemptive move. And I think we're looking at it to protect our assets, whether or not they've made, they said they're pursuing through CoBank, which is co-op bank that works with the USDA, and with USDA loans, there are limitations and encumbrances that could be applied to Sonoma Verde infrastructure. I think preemptively, we decided that it was going to be judicious for us to at least provide notice to RCH and CoBank that these assets would not be collateralized. We're putting them on notice that this is our property, it's not to be used for an application. So I see nothing wrong with being preemptive about this, proactive about this, and protecting the assets of the city and the citizens.
So the information is, it's basically just from a series of a conversation that quickly was had that kind of sparked this. So we really don't know what they're pledging and what they're not pledging, what they're telling the USDA they're going to use. So for example, the city currently has a unpaid franchise fee, for example. We don't know if that's been encumbered, right?
Yes.
Or even applied for, right?
Yeah, we don't know. And that, and as Dan explained, this is more of a preemptive measure to put them on notice, and there may be an effective ways to achieve that same end doing this, and that's kind of what we're heading towards. And obtaining additional information may be helpful too, to try to identify the most appropriate means by which to achieve that objective, which is, we want to make sure that Sonoma Verde is not encumbered, for lack of a better term, in any way, so that there's, we retain the same flexibility in the future as we have today, notwithstanding the licensing agreement by which RCH provides water to the Sonoma Verde residents. And that's kind of what all this is just to maintain a status quo.
Mr. Mayor, you've talked to these guys. Do you know if there's an application on file? No knowledge? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Hall, I do have a question. Does sending this letter protect the city?
It could. I would like to obviously know more. I don't really have a problem sending it to, RCH and say, hey, look, if you do a loan, don't include our assets on it because we don't want them to be, federally. But I would be a bit hesitant to just send them out to random, lenders. Now, I understand that we may have a bead more. There may be somebody specific. It may be instead of a shotgun, it may be more of a rifle approach as to, that one lender. I'd feel more comfortable if we had some real knowledge that they had sent the application before he did it. And also too, I think if we direct them that these are our assets, we own them, we're revisiting a contract. We don't know if we're going to continue with the contract or not, which is all fair, and we've all discussed that. I think there's an argument to be made that at that point, if they did use our assets, I think they are, in my opinion, they're running a very real risk of fraudulently obtaining a federally backed loan when we've put them on notice that our assets should not be used because we're revisiting contracts that if we change our mind or do something different on the contracts, either Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Day mentioned, if we change our mind on those, then, you've submitted a fraudulent application to whoever it was to get the federal back loan. Then you got some federal problems as well as some state problems. I still think it's more, appropriate for Ms. Rogers to address that question because she specifically deals with the water. Because I do know, for example, our state law under 53022, nobody can encumber or put a lien upon government-owned property. Okay. Now there's preemption. There's direct, indirect, and implied preemption. I'm not aware of anything directly or indirectly where the federal government has subsumed the entire area of lending for water utilities or given some explicit regulation passed down regarding lending to water utilities that would preclude anybody else from regulating in that area. So I would think that that would still give us some protection. But again, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know and turn it over to the experts like Ms. Rogers who do know about the water. But just in general, unsure about part of it, have no problem sending it out to RCH. I mean, I think at least two of you, maybe three of you, said it pretty simply. Hey, it's our stuff. Don't mess with our stuff. And we're just telling you, don't mess with our stuff. That's how I see that part.
So just a couple of things on this. I believe both sides of the table, RCH as well as the city, just take some deep breaths. We have had conversations, and I firmly have always believed collaboratively working together is better than working against one another. We've been able to accomplish that in the last few months. And I never make it a secret about my faith. And I heard a sermon where it talks about, do we make a point or do we make a difference? And in this case, maybe we're making a point, but at the end of the day, I think we serve better when we serve to make a difference. Maybe there is a difference here, I don't know. I think all businesses do have a cost when they grow, and those have always been passed on to consumers. It's a bummer for us as consumers. It's just part of the package. I will say I support my council, and I support my Mayor Pro Tem, and there will not be a divide by me on any of these issues. They know where I stand on it. They know how I feel about it, and I appreciate those conversations that we've had. So if there's no other discussion on this, then I will look to take this to a vote. Is there any other discussion? Then we'll just go down the line. Councilmember Easter.
Yeah, I'm voting in favor of the proposed, or have we even proposed a resolution?
This takes me back to an item back with the old council where we had an item, but we didn't have a letter. We're voting on something we cannot see. So there was a motion made, there was a second. So I'm just going down. I don't know how we vote on a resolution without the people having an opportunity to have ever seen that resolution.
Well,
Sir, I'm reviewing the resolution or the motion the agenda item here. It just simply says to prepare a letter, and so it provides the scope of that letter. And so I think that we are approving the preparation of the letter. Is that what we're doing? We're just the preparation of the letter, Mr. Holland? That's what the item says, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so then we're back to, are you a yay or a nay?
okay. Yeah, no, I'm in favor of preparing a letter for
So yay.
submitting to RCH and possibly its lenders.
Councilmember Brewer, yay or nay?
Nay.
Councilmember Day, yay or nay?
Yay.
And Mayor Pro Tem?
Yay.
Okay, show that 3-1, please. So that will take us to,
Sorry, so does that suggest that we're bringing the letter back once it's written? Is that what, that's my understanding, Mr. Holland, right? So this is just getting a letter authored. Thank you.
yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about item 11.2. We're going to do 11.2 real quick because I got O'Reilly's.
Okay, so 11.2, Discuss and consider the request of Jared Rickenbach, McLendon-Chisholm Commercial Holdings, Inc., for approval of the final plat that provides for the development of one commercial lot which, at build-out, shall be O'Reilly's Auto Parts Store.
Okay, so I'm going to let Mr. Holla speak on this real quick due to the citizens' comments. Mr. Holla, please.
Thanks, Mayor. So just a few things about this item. Law was changed a few years ago, and we've got 30 days, the P&Z has 30 days to hear the plat and approve it, deny it with conditions. They have to specifically state why, or approve it with conditions or deny it, and then they must specifically state the reasons they're denying it, okay? Then, from the day that they do that, there's another 30 days where the council has the right to hear about the plat. Now, it's very important because as a matter of law, without anybody doing anything, if the 30 days elapses and the council doesn't make a decision, the plat is approved. Period. There's no discussion, no nothing, okay? So it's very important to understand that plats are very different from any land use regulation that we have in law. It's very unique, okay? Another thing that's very, very important. As y'all know, we do a lot of zoning here. As you also know, the council has a lot of discretion in looking at zoning and making decisions about zoning and how zoning is going to affect the community and whether they want zoning and is it harmonious with the community and what's too much and what's not enough. Those are all things that you do with zoning. Plats are not like that. The law says, 212-009 says, hey, look, if two questions are all that matter with plats. And the law says, we don't care what you say, council. We don't care what anybody says. This is what the state legislatures have, in their wisdom, said. Only two things matter. If it is technically compliant with the subdivision ordinance, and it's or administratively complete, that literally means enough copies, the font is correct, the staples are in the right place. That's what administratively complete means. If the answers to those two questions are yes, you have to approve it. You don't have a choice, council. And in fact, the law, case law, goes a step further. If those two things are yes, and you do not approve it, we're going to let the developer sue you personally. This is not as a council member. That is you all personally. So your house, your cars, everything could be at risk if you say no to approving a plat that is administratively complete and technically compliant. So it's very, very, very important for everybody to understand. Now, why is that? Well, I think I'm pretty well on record from everybody knowing I'm not a big fan of our state legislature, okay? But I think I can postulate, if you will, that part of it with plats it's just a diagram of where things are supposed to go. It's your first basic step. Like we've talked about easements, okay? Hey, what the plat says, this is where the easement goes. But that's it. It doesn't say what's going to go in the easement, how that's going to be built, the material that's going to use to be built, how thick it's going to be, all that stuff. None of that is covered with the plat, okay? All of that comes because they're still going to have to comply by all the building requirements that we have to build that. So if they're going to build it, they're going to build it right. The plat has nothing to do with that. It's just the location of where it is. And so I think my guess on the state legislature is that they say, look, some of this stuff is just so basic. It's not something like zoning. Hey, that could be a big deal where you're going to put this, how you're going to put that, what your density is going to be. State legislature realize that's a big thing. You need to discuss it. Some of this stuff is, hey, they've got the ordinances laid out, and they can, to a certain extent, have control over what the order we're going to get. They've changed that too, so hang tight for that. That's coming up in a minute. But whatever they've got in the subdivision ordinance, okay, you know what? That's what they've got. And if it complies with that, we're not going to waste time with a bunch of other stuff. Zoning is different. There are things like that. Comprehensive plans, all those things are different. That's a lot of discussion, a lot of interaction. Plats are not. So what I understand about this plat, it is administratively complete, and it does meet the technical requirements of our subdivision ordinance. Now, what I also understand, it was about a week ago that the P&Z recommended with a condition, and the condition was, I don't remember what it was, but the condition was appropriate. So if we want to put it off to our next council meeting, which is roughly 2 weeks from now, that is still within that 30-day window. So it is fine if we want to do that, and we want to talk about some things, because another little wrinkle, Dubbed Freight, our engineer, he's working out some engineering on the drainage. I'm working out language on the actual easement agreement, like who's going to maintain it, how it's going to be, stuff like that. And I've made some red lines and revisions, and I've sent it to Dub. I'm waiting to hear back from them, and then once we're good with it, we'll forward it on to them. So we're working on a drainage easement agreement, so that stuff will take care of some of these other things that we've talked about. But it's really separate from the plat. It'll take care of those other issues, and Dub is on top of making sure that this thing is not going to be splashing everywhere while they're building a detention pond, which the whole purpose of that is to keep everything safe. So that helps out.
So, real quick, since I know we haven't motion yet, Mark, being that you're here, would you be able to tell us, if you don't mind, what was that stipulation? Thanks. Sorry, I put you on the spot, sir.
It's quite all right, Mayor. Mark Kippett, Chairman of Planning and Zoning. We considered the plat application. Agree with Mr. Hall. It completely complied with state guidelines, and most importantly, complied with our subordinates checklist. The item that is in question is a drainage flow plan that is required, that has not been completed, or actually, the applicant has submitted it or claimed submission. It has not been, we don't know the exact status out of the city attorney, or sorry, city engineer, who will review it. It's that simple. So and since it's a drainage issue, as Mr. Hall highlighted, there's a next phase, right? So this is a plat, which is the meets and bounds, the location of the appropriate easements, technical definition of the land itself. And then the construction would go through a whole permitting process conducted by city staff that would include the construction of specific catch basins and flow plans and et cetera. So that would all be concluded. So in our judgment, we agreed with the applicant that their submission was sufficient and complete. Contingent final approval by the city engineer for the flow plan. The city engineer currently has that. I know he's working that with city staff. I know city staff will deliver it. So I would encourage, you could choose to delay, since the applicant has asked to delay 2 weeks, it won't make any difference relative to state law. Clarify that one, any final issue, but other than that, it could be approved tonight. Contingent, the flow plan. Thank you. Any questions?
If you don't mind staying up there, I was going to ask if the O'Reilly's engineer is here. Is that correct? If you don't mind, we're doing this a little backwards because I'm trying to get the answers before we make the motion on what we want to decide to do. Does anyone up here have any questions for the engineer while he is here, knowing that we've heard from our city attorney as well as the chairman of P&Z on where we're at and how they've recommended this approval based off of stipulation? Does anybody have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any questions on it, or? Well, you're about to get hit with some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Engineer. I had the opportunity to review your original testimony to the P&Z, and I'm looking at the flow plan right now, and I've spent a considerable amount of time reviewing this, and I can't say that I'm terribly thrilled with what I'm seeing. I don't think you're surprised to hear that, right?
No, I would be surprised to hear that. I had a conversation in person with Dub, the city engineer, and we talked through a game plan for a temporary basin. I don't know if council is familiar with the master development plan for the area.
They're not.
Well, there will be, in the future, potentially a large detention basin in that location. And so what this is right now would basically be a smaller basin in that footprint that would serve the purpose of detaining water to match the existing condition in accordance with the city's design standards. And then it would just discharge to the place that water is going right now. So I believe this would be a great, easy fix. Like I said, it's just temporary. And then once the master development goes in and that larger basin is in place, that can replace what is installed.
So,
Can I add a point on the master development? So council would not have that in front of them because it hasn't been submitted by the developer, Mr. Whittle. It's a concept plan. But he owns the entire track from now O'Reilly's, but also the area behind O'Reilly's, and down south on 205. So there's a concept he is developing for commercial development along that entire area. At the end of it, when this is fully completed, at the end, there's going to be a large retention pond that's going to be put in place to catch the drainage south, right? That's a drainage flow for the entire development that would include Berkshire's.
Where is that large development, I'm sorry, large detention pond relative to where Ms. Hall was talking about earlier in Cattle Baron?
I can't answer that question because I don't know.
Okay, so just relative to Cattle Baron.
It would be south of,
okay,
if I understand.
Towards the cemetery?
So the Chisholm Cemetery would sort of be the south border.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to come up a little from that, right? That's that entire, he owns that entire track that extends down 205.
And so the water would be moving south away from Cattle Baron.
That would be the net. And I'm not the engineer, but yeah.
Okay. The water drains southwest to a box culvert that goes under Cattle Baron.
I think a key point here is the floodplain, right? As the FEMA floodplain is to the west of Phase 4. So it's well off. The floodplain definition is well off 205. Well off. It would be on the other side of the Phase 4 development.
And when will this, the master development basin plan be available for public inspection?
Right. Now you're asking hypothetical. So it's Mr. Whittle is obviously actively trying to sell the sub-parcels that would develop that, right, as companies come in.
And because that is so early in the design phase, that's the reason why we need this temporary basin, is in case that falls through or something like that, we've got a basin in place that works, that meets the stormwater requirements.
Yeah.
So the temporary solution was the agreed solution with
Yeah,
city.
I may be getting out too far ahead, but this last rains that we've had this past fall, there was a lot of water on Cattle Baron, and it all is running over there, and you can see the ditch. I think, Dan, were you out there last weekend or something? And this is what the real concern is that that little corner is going to create a lot of issues based upon the development that's out there. As Ms. Hall pointed out, this is beyond it, but it's the barrier.
If I
between the water.
may interrupt you, sir. But the flood flow that you're talking about, that affected me in Phase 1 and 2, is in general direction, from the northwest towards the southeast. So coming off 205, you're not going to get flooding back into Cattle Baron from 205. It's going to flow the opposite direction, down that direction of 205.
On the one side, but it's
flooding,
kind of a hump
I don't
right there,
know.
isn't it?
I don't know specifically, but the flooding, and I am not a flood engineer, but the floodplain that was flooding in the range you're talking about was in the floodplain, which is on the west side of Phase 4, because it affected us in Phase 1 and 2 as well. That's where I had my retention pond overflow for the first time in 10 years. So
Well, I'll just defer back to Dan and Paul. I think that you guys were out there kind of looking at things.
I do have a question on this being a temporary retention pond, and if you get flow, it goes into the retention pond. If you get very torrential rains occurring like we have in the past, and you get an overflow, you're assuming that that's going to go into the drainage culvert, I suppose, on Cattle Barren. The question I have is, that is private property. I live in that development. So is there any stipulation when it comes to state law that they actually have to divert that water flow along the property that they have an easement to, and precluding it from going on to our property, which could cause damage, which I've seen damage induced with erosion and breakdown of concrete road and breakdown of curb. So are we protected as residents in that development? So if we see an overflow coming out of this pond and it's going down into the drainage device there that we have along the road, then there'll be some. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, so
I'm concerned about this again because I live in the community, and according to one resident here, and I've spoken to other residents, that drainage site on Cattle Barren, when we do get heavy rains, tends to flood to start with, and so you may end up exacerbating that problem, and we'll be observant of water flow over that curb. And if that's the case, then there's going to be some difficulties. So what I'm looking at is trying to preclude that from occurring just to start with. So this temporary solution needs to be very well thought out, is what I'm getting at.
So listening to the citizens.
So real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off. Mr. Kippy, you might be able to help me on this one. At the end of the day, as of right now, Dub has not approved or anything on this retention pond, right? So this retention pond, again, is kind of separate from what by law is a plat here. So it's like we're almost talking about something that is another meeting almost.
So I'm going to pose this to the city attorney. I mean, the plat has to show the drainage flow.
Correct.
By state law.
Right, and so it's showing the drainage
and by
flow.
our subdivision ordinance. It does not have to show the flood plain or the 50-year flood rules. Correct. That's a separate document that's required for the city.
Which I'm assuming is the next stage in this, right? So if we're talking about the plat in itself, by law, Mr. Hollow, we have, as you stated, that's where we're at. What we're talking about right now is something that's either later on to come to us with their plans with Dub. We're passing a plat, if it goes this way, that is still contingent based off the stipulations that were put from P&Z recommendation to council. Am I correct in that? So I guess for me, while I appreciate all the questions to the engineer, where is this going? I guess is my point, because we're given the stipulation. Their engineer is going to work with our engineer. And then at that point, we would have those questions that we can talk to the engineer about, being their engineer and Dub's and our city engineer. Is that correct?
I think you're correct. I think maybe the benefit of putting it off 2 weeks is it sounds like Dub will have everything done by then, you know? So, but I don't disagree with you at all.
But in 2 weeks, we still got to approve it with the same stipulation.
No, 2 weeks, you potentially have
or a full approval.
Resolution of the
without the stipulation.
Engineering approved
that's true.
Preliminary plan.
Okay, so you were saying you wanted to table this, or
something that I mentioned is we sent this plan to the city's engineer and city staff before the PNC meeting. So we were under the impression, because there had been extensive communication, that everybody had looked at this and given us the green light. So O'Reilly was excited to move forward with this project. If tabling this 2 weeks to make sure everybody's on the same page is what's needed, we will do that. Something that I would like to add is, it sounds like there is issues with drainage on Cattle Baron Drive. What the purpose of our design is to take from the O'Reilly lot and analyze downstream of that to the basin, and then whatever leaves that basin is going to be less what's leaving the area right now. So the water that goes to Cattle Baron Drive is not going to get worse. So that might not solve what's already flooded over there, but it's not going to be worse. And that's what our goal is. And what we did with the temporary drainage easement is we didn't make it as small as possible. We gave ourselves a little bit of a buffer. So if the basin needs to be upsized a little bit, they can do that. This is just for the easement. My point is we're really trying to work with the city and get something that works for everybody, because we're excited for the development.
Okay. My turn. With that said, I do have concerns, and I didn't really get to the chance earlier to bring these things up. There's some scientific concerns here. So a little bit about me, I'm an engineering hydrogeologist. This is right up my alley. This is what I do. I teach it. And so when I look at something like this and an engineer puts an arrow showing water flow going in a direction that is antithetical to the way that the topo lines would dictate that water would go, I have an immediate concern. This site water plan is not scientifically sound. I'm very concerned about this. And then I just found out that there's another one that came out. It's a little bit better. It has an easement on there. I don't know what you're doing with it, and it's all based upon a hypothetical basin that nobody's ever heard about that we haven't approved yet.
So the first one that you're talking about, that one is not sealed by a professional engineer.
That's obvious now. Yeah.
And that was done because there was discussion about this larger basin. So it's what can we provide as just a temporary solution for the plat approval. Not the construction approval, but plat approval. So this was something where we had 2 days to put something together. So we're like, hey, here's a location that we could stick a basin. Once we realized that you guys would need something in more detail, we put the easement together. We used the rational method, which is TxDOT and city standards. We calculated time of concentration, used the local rainfall data to determine flow rates, and we have a sealed plan saying this is not going to make the flooding condition on Cattle Baron Road worse. If it sounds like council would be more comfortable, if we can have something from Dub, your city engineer, saying, hey, we agree this is going to work, and not going to make any of the flooding scenarios worse.
Well, I mean, I want to know where the decisions are coming from to direct it to Cattle Baron at that location in the first place. Why there? Why not to another site?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Why is it being directed to that pinpoint location on Cattle Baron? Where did that come from? Like, again, I see no ordinance, no resolution, nothing that is in any plans that I have. You're basing it upon a hypothetical. You're putting a lot of money and a lot of time into doing this based upon a lot of hypotheticals that the city council is not privy to. This is the first time I had ever heard of it. And again, I do water. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Why don't I know about this until I look down and I say, they're directing it to her front yard. I know exactly where she lives.
So on that road, just north of the right-of-way, there is a swale.
Yes, sir.
And that swale runs west a good distance, and then it goes to a box culvert that runs under Cattle Baron Drive.
Yes, sir.
So that outfall from that basin goes to that swale, not to the Cattle Baron storm sewer. It's going to that swale, which then takes it to the box culvert, which runs under the road.
Which, based upon the evidence that we're receiving from testimony of the people that live there, is not sufficient for the current needs in that area now.
And that's why we restrict it to more than existing. That's why the basin is in place. And then we outfall to the swale at a flow rate less than existing.
what is the velocity of the water going to be when it impacts on that basin? Do you have a calculation yet? Is it going to be 3 feet per second, something like that?
To prevent erosion, we'd keep it less than 5 feet per second.
Okay, I've heard what I need to hear.
Okay, so we're at Mr. Hollow, since we have discussed this clearly more than probably should have, he has asked that we can, without worrying about the shot clock, put this on the next agenda. Right, I know we can't waive the shot clock. It's counting down as we talk. So to move this, I mean, it's going to be an approval in 2 weeks. So do we move it 2 weeks or? So if that's what it sounds like O'Reilly's has asked us to do as well, do we need to move any action here, or do I just say put it to the next agenda? Put it on. I would rather just get this done now, but I don't. We're going to have to approve this based off of law. Law wins, okay? It just does. So we either vote on it tonight, and or we put it on the next agenda. So
The stipulation, we've approved it
with that
upon the
stipulation.
condition that this get done. So if it doesn't get done, that's the whole point of the condition/stipulation. If that doesn't get done, it's not approved. Right. Yeah. Does that help?
I'll look at taking a motion on agenda item 11.2.
Make a motion to approve the final plat for O'Reilly's, subject to conditions as stipulated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
If there's no further discussions, all those in favor say aye.
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 Show that unanimous. Now we will go to back in order at 11.1. Angela.
.1, public hearing for the proposed 2024-2025 fiscal year budget.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I don't believe there's a motion required for this. Just to hold the public hearing.
Okay, I will open the public hearing on 11.1. If there is no one to speak on it, I will close item 11.1. 11.3, Angela.
11.3, discuss and consider approval of final plat for the separation into 3 lots and development of a single-family residential lot on 9.78 acres of land located on Dow Road with frontage on Dow Road located at 2636 Dow Road.
Conrad.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'll immediately defer this to our planning manager, Mr. Woodbury.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the request, the applicant is requesting the approval of a final plat for the Bear Point subdivision of a 9.78 acre tract of land located on Dow Road north of the intersection with FM 550 in the city of McLendon-Chisholm's extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ. The 9.7 acre tract of land is being divided into 3 separate lots. And so the planning and zoning recommendation was approval. Staff recommendation is approval. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Clerk, Clearly, I went out of order again, so I apologize, council. So since we're already talking about it, we'll just talk about it, and then we'll do as we did at the last one. We'll, of course, correct on the next agenda item. Councilmember Easter, do you have anything on this one, sir? Councilmember Brewer?
No, sir.
Councilmember Day?
No, sir.
And Councilmember, or I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just have a question on why this comes before city council when it's in the ETJ. I might be naive in that, asking that question, but help me out.
Our subdivision ordinance is pretty much the only regulation we have in the ETJ. And really the theory behind that is because with plats, you're marking down fire hydrants, fire lanes, you want to make sure that everybody can have emergency vehicles getting in and out and that type of thing.
Mr. Kipp.
We have a interlocal agreement with the county. We approve inside the ETJ, we approve plats.
Appreciate that. Well, since we did discussion, I'll take a motion on 11.3 at this time, and I apologize for going out of order again.
I move that we that we approve the final plat for the separation of 3 lots and development of a single-family resident lot on 9.78 acres of land located on Dowell Road.
A second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Angela, show that unanimous. .4.
Presentation or discussion on FY25 proposed budget.
And this one will be just a discussion item, so Conrad.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is an exciting time. You all like to have budget time. So we can smile and have an enjoyable time. I promise the mayor not to be so verbose in the fact that not to miss any items, but in the case that we do have another 2 meetings prior to requested approval. And as the mayor stated, this is just a presentation, and any questions that you have now, tonight, or into the days, weeks that we have between final approval that's scheduled for September 24th. And I do appreciate Councilmember Brewer sending his questions to us, and we have those, and we've tried to answer some, but we're going to talk about them a little, hopefully tonight, but for sure tonight or next Tuesday. And we were going to have our work session over at the fire station next Tuesday on the 17th. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission was very helpful to cancel or postpone their meeting to October 1st. And so we thank ASA for that. And so you'll be here next Tuesday, same bad time. Some lovely quotes at the beginning. But what I did is I gave you my notes for tonight, so you could follow along, make any quotations. And I also want to let you know that in this digital budget book that we have purchased the ClearGov software. The digital budget book is very bright, very vibrant, and colorful, and not as bad as a printed page. And you see on page 33 where this starts that it's meant more to view online than in paper. However, we're working hard to make it, every time you'll see the paper have more vibrancy and popping off the page, but online it's a little bit better, or substantially better. But if you notice there, it says digital budget book. My time for me. Let me go through a few things. You'll see a lot of changes. Oh, I was going to mention that every time we make some type of working toward final budget approval, we will include that in the online version. So immediately, instantaneously, it'll update. So if you look at something today, tomorrow it may be a little bit different. It's not going to be dramatic anymore because we're seeing the finish line and stuff. So, but definitely some things that we may talk about tonight that you may suggest we could add those to it. And specifically also, we have some city pictures that we want to add in there. And I mean, those are nice things. It adds to maybe some charts or graphs that are easier to read for some people than strictly numbers. On page 8, and now what you have to do is if you look at your budget, you're on, and the table of contents is the next, you have to look at the page number right at the bottom of the digital budget book, which is above your packet page number. Hopefully everyone can see that. The packet page number says page X of X plus whatever. But the budget book is right above it on the bottom right corner of the digital budget. And I'm asking you to go to page 8 real quick. So I'll give you a second to move over to page 8. So we thumb through there. And what you'll notice is a proposed budget notice. This is what we talked about last time pretty in-depthly about the tax rate. You'll notice in the box, which is still a little smaller, and we're going to get it bigger, make changes like that as well. You'll notice that the FY24-25, which is October 1, 24 through September 30, 25, which is our fiscal year coinciding with the federal fiscal year, is at 0.096256. Current year, it's 0.09658. So it drops a little bit. It is based at what the council has recommended as a voter and has approved tonight as a proposed voter approval rate. And that voter approval rate allows for 3.5% above current rate. And that 100% exclusively is to account for inflation. The legislature used to have an 8% increase without any type of vote, and they lowered it about 3 or 4 years ago to, or maybe even a little bit more than that, 5 years ago, to the point to 3.5%. That's the max you can go. So above the current, and the only way that your property tax is going to increase more than that is if the valuation of your home increases more than that. So you're winning on that side, that your house used to be worth $100,000 and now it's worth $300,000. So you're going to have to pay a little. It's on a rate, on a percentage for that. So that's what that is, and we'll talk about that again. We'll ask you on the 24th to not only adopt the rate, but to also adopt, as I get reminded every year by our illustrious city attorney, that we need to also adopt the INS rate and the M&O rate, which is our debt service rate, because it's broken up. This number is broken up even more fine-tunedly, so we have to pay for our budget, or our bonding, and that rate is in here. So we're not going to talk a lot about the debt service fund, because we'll pull out a rate, and that immediately goes to pay off that debt service, our principal and interest payments. All right, if you go to the next page, page 9, you'll see a property tax comparison. We have 3 main property tax entities here in the county that the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm pay into. Those 3 would be the Rockwell ISD, the Rockwell County, and then our city. Other cities have other entities, taxing entities or whatever, but we have those 3 major. And we're not a major, we're a minor. If you notice that dollar bill sitting there, over 3/4 of that of your property tax bills goes to the Rockwell ISD. And then about 3 times what we have, our rate, goes to Rockwell County. And then we're down at about 6.9% of the overall property tax bill directly comes to the city. If I fail to do this, I meant to do this, I will talk about this right now, but I'll show you maybe as we go through. The cost of our entire property, the total amount of money we receive for our property tax bill is not only half the cost of what it takes to run our fire department. So that's where we're at. and that if you turn the page one more time, On page 10, you'll see another property tax comparison of entities, cities in our area, and you'll find our rate and our city's name at the very bottom of that. You'll see that even the cities around us are 3 times more than what we, and more. If you look at the very top, we have Terrell, it's 76 cents on every $100. We're 9 cents, 9.5. All right, just so you can see that, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Now if you go to page 17, this is the fun part of it. She didn't get to see last time. And there's this a real handsome guy on page 17. And smiling for the whole world to see, our illustrious leader, Mayor McNeil. But as soon as you start smiling and making little quotes about it, your picture's
page 18.
Your picture's going to come right after.
That picture was all teeth. That was great.
and then after you go through all that, don't go too far. Because someone, let's see. And then we'll go to page 29, which is sort of the meat and bones of this. If you turn to page 29, that is the fund structure. And as you know, the city is broken up into funds. We have governmental funds. If you'll see in your audit, and they're required by GASB regulation. Can't quote the number like our city attorney, but there's a GASB regulation that requires us to split those up into governmental funds and proprietary or enterprise or business type funds. So in our fund structure, we obviously have our general fund balance, which is our operation and maintenance, our main fund of where most of the money goes. We also have a public safety fund that a lot of times is also part of the general fund, but we split it out per council recommendation so you can see everything going on in the public safety fund. And we separated it out so everybody can see. We also have such funds as a utility fund, which right now is sewer, sanitary sewer. And then we're hoping also to have, we have an ARPA fund, which is the COVID money. That's going to go away because, as you'll see tonight, the COVID money is being spent. We don't replace it into COVID money. Even if we get reimbursed by some of the uses of the money, it will go back into general fund use money. But also we have a capital fund and are hoping to recommend to you to have a roads and streets capital reserve fund and a public safety reserve fund along with that, and to put some of our fund money into that. So we have all these funds. So if you turn to page 29, and all this other stuff between this is important and good reading, but here's the funds, or excuse me, 31, excuse me. 4 minutes? I'm almost at 20.
You have 10 minutes.
30, it's not 31. Yeah. Oh no, that's budget processor. The fund structure and on actually page 35. There's a summary of the funds that you or the general fund, the comprehensive summary of the general fund. You can go down there and see. If you look, we show you 2000 at the top row. We show you the name of this is revenues right here, and then the next page on the very bottom it says expenditures, but the next 3 or 4 pages are expenditures. You'll see the FY23 actual, you'll see the FY24 adopted, which is our current year, and we have the FY24 projected. We have received most of these line items closed out months through July, and some of them are closed out through August. So it's real close, and for the September or the August, September, those last 2 months, we took last year's actuals and put them in there. So is it perfect? No, but is it going to be pretty close? That's why it says projected and not actual. And then you have the FY25, which is what we're working on for all these. So you can see all these revenue sources as you go down there. And we really try to budget revenues conservatively, and the expenses are budgeted liberally. And I want you to understand that a budget is a educated guess on where we're going to be in all these line items. Then every month you get this document, which are your monthly financials of the closed books for that month, and you go and check to see how close are they, how are they doing, what is for what we budgeted. You see the actual dollars spent every month as you get these. And so that's what's important. These two documents right here are what's important. But right now, I had a city council member in the past says, you bet your salary on this budget dollar or amount. And I said, well, it's close. He goes, no, I want you to be exact. It's like, well, we hope to be exact. Some of these line items are exact because I know exactly how much the bill's going to be for our, like workers' compensation insurance for the year, because they've already told us and we have it in there. Or liability insurance, we have it, it's in there. But other ones we don't know. So some of these revenues are based on growth, and when we're a growing city, we can project, and we try to project based on a variety of things. Historically, trends, comparisons, etc. And then if you see the development and the permit on this line, on this page 35, development and permit increases are due to increased growth. You also look at the sales taxes dropped in the FY23 actual was 679,000, and the current year adopted was 668, and then the sales tax went to 525. Well, if you know in the actuals, you'll see that sales tax, this is true for sales tax, but the next line item in the actuals pulls out the 380 agreements of what we owe out to other entities through our sales tax generation. So you don't see that, what we're pulling out every month like you do here, but you can see it here and you say, oh, how come we're dropping in that much money down? And that's the reason for that. You also see why this has gained a little bit of the bottom line, the total revenues. We've included the trash and recycling line item, which we haven't had in the past. And so you look at 5 lines from the bottom, you can see that. And also on the other income, you'll notice that there was nothing adopted, and we had 400, or what is it, that we have projected as 629,000 for this current year. There was a one-time other thing, or $600,000 check that we got in here that is included in this year that is not, that is a one-time experience, and not, that's why it's not included in the budget and not included in the net, we drop back down to the 31,000. And the rest of that 31,000, the other is basically credit card fees, where we charge a convenience fee on credit card usage, and we have to pay out to the credit card entities when people use credit cards between 2-point-something% to like 3-point-something%, and we actually charge 5 for that convenience. We pay all of our, I mean, we have somebody doing it, so we have other costs with that. Another thing that we have in here as you review these, which I'd encourage you to review all these different funds. These are key things in here. They're important, but also need to tell you that we've updated, and I have told you this before, we've updated our chart of accounts, and we have combined different line items into the same line item. We have, just to make it more understandable and readable and important through that. But on page 36, toward the bottom of the chart, not of the graph, but of the chart, you'll see on the far right of the FY25 proposed, you'll notice the total revenues less expenditures line or row at the far right on the FY25 proposed is 0. And that 0.00 means that this is balanced. That means the total expenditures, which is right above it, of 4.35969 million of expenditures. You go back to where your revenue page was, page 35, and you'll see that same at the bottom right, total revenues of 4.35697,969 million. So we take total revenues minus total expenditures, and we get that 0 that's on there. So everything that's in here, that's what it's telling you. Everything that's in here is balanced, is paid for with projected revenues and projected expenditures. And like I say, it's conservative on our revenues and liberal on our expenses, or where we going with that. All right, if you turn your and I'm just going through my notes if you're doing that, and that's the balanced budget. I gotta hurry. You'll also note that let's see, I think it's back on the expenditure page.
If you're going from .091 to .096,
Tom.
that's 5%. That's not 3.5%.
Tom.
That'll trigger a vote.
We have to just stay in order.
All the numbers bad, so
I would just give them a call and reach out to them and have that conversation. It's not that we don't, it's just we have to stay in order, sir. Go ahead, Conrad.
All right, thank you. And I'm not going to go through all these line items you can see, but all these line items are operational line items, and so it's what it's cost, what you've approved in the past, and that we've had and just some that have changed dramatically that you may want to have an explanation about. But it's stuff that you've already approved into the past. But I wanted to show you on page 39, about six rows down, you'll see city planner development. And if you look at the FY on page 39, about 6 lines down, you'll see that the line item is city planner development. If you look under what's proposed in the budget, and this says development, city planner does development, it's zeroed out. That means there's no more retainer costs, where they have to put up money into a retainer, they pay the city through application. We're getting with our outside contractor and virtually cutting that amount in half, and not having any more retainers, getting all the money through application process that we're doing through that. So you see the 0, but you'll also see on another line item, which I'll show you, that the actual cost of what it's getting on the other side of it. Since I don't have a whole lot of time to go through these, I'd love to sit down with you on all these if you want, but like I say, this is all
and we'll have an opportunity next Tuesday
time to go through,
when we'll be able to dive into this a little bit greater.
But let me show you on the very back of this, and let me get to that for my last few minutes. Go to the ARPA spending, which is like the second to third line from the bottom. ARPA, it's on this. It's not in your budget. It's on your notes, my notes, your notes. These are all the projects that you've approved for COVID spending over the time period. And you'll say, we didn't get that much money in COVID. You're wrong. I don't do my math right. We got interest, that we accrued interest, as that's been sitting in the bank, and good interest, and so we've accrued additional money and we're spending it all. But as I mentioned, like the number 1 line item for number 4 on this, the sewer line expansion, we will be putting in the sewer line on all 4 corners of Main and Main, of 550 and 205, and it'll cost, but then as different entities decide to come in to the city, there'll be a cost divided by their acreage that they have, and we'll charge them for their percentage of this $550,000 that it takes to put it in. And so we'll get reimbursed, but it'll all come back to to us, it won't be ARPA money anymore. But you see those projects that are there and what we've done. Next, these are the last 2 pages that I think you need to really look at. And you'll see one that says approved budget items in the current budget. These are different things. These aren't supplies. These aren't how much are you spending on pencils and all this other stuff. These are things that are new things that when I challenged our staff to say, how do you make your department work the best to provide the best service and quality to the residents of this city, they gave me some things. And the ones on the first page are the ones that are currently approved and in the budget. That doesn't mean they have to stay in the budget, but those are the things that are balanced in the budget right now. I mean, there's revenues equals expenditures. And then on the next page are things that are not in the budget and discussions. You'll see, and things that they differently said they needed to do or have, but there's not enough money to pay for all this stuff. You'll see on, like, at the top, you see a Cassell ERP. That's into the future as we think of pulling our finance and our accounting into the city. If you wanted a utility billing clerk to collect for and get rid of our contract provider into the future and add on and have that, we're going to need this ERP system that every city has that all talks together. We could pull in building permits and and business licenses and utility bills and everything we can as our overall financial software for the city. But just so you can see how much it's going to cost, we're not proposing that it goes in this year or even next, whatever, but it's coming. And so just so you know some of that, we have we had one request for a full-time staff addition in the general fund of $70,000. And what we've decided and what we put into the budget is you've already approved Mrs. Jennings' old job of a part-time administrative assistant, and we'd like to add a part-time planning technician to join with that to make one full-time. So really we're just adding money for a half-time. And so that person, that planning technician / administrative assistant, would help out when Judy's not there on afternoons and Fridays, as well as be this planning technician as we phase out of our planning, our contract planning, and our current guide as we go like that to go all the way. And that's what we've always planned. That's what council has asked for us to do. So that's why we're moving, and that's why we've cut over half of the planning amount that we paid current year into this year. A pool car based on some suggestions from the mayor, and we can talk about that because we hope to next meeting give a lot of time to our 20 minutes to our fire chief, no more, to discuss the public safety fund, which is an operating fund. Remember, I said a lot of times it's included in the general fund. We didn't even talk about the public safety fund, but we will, and it's not that he's not extremely important and great, but it doesn't fit into the 20 minutes. And I know I'm over my 20 minutes.
We've exceeded the 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'll stop with that. But please review it, ask any questions. I haven't marked on here. If you see in my notes, that's why I gave them. As you start looking through and say, well, how come that changed so much? Well, I tried to have some of the answers in here for you to do it. But please call, text, email, whatever your mode of flying pigeon, whatever, but however best you use it, ask me, and we'll have a lot of this ready for next time. We'll probably have more time. And if you have questions about tax rates or anything, how they're put together and how much, anything you want, because on the 24th, just to close out, we need to adopt a tax rate. First, we need to adopt a budget, which seems in backwards order. You adopt the budget, but you're using the tax rate. If you don't adopt the same tax rate, your budget isn't good. But you have to, per state law, you have to adopt the budget first, then adopt the tax rate, then adopt the or approve the tax rate, then adopt the INS and M&O rate, and then we'll also have fees and charges, and updated fees and charges for you on the 24th, and an amended budget for current year. How some of the things that we may have been off that you approve for current year that we'll have going. And don't forget, the next day after that is another, not a town hall for home rule, but a second separate town hall for our architect next Wednesday, and we'd like you to be here available between 1 and 5, so you can come and go 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 3 with the mayors there. You can go to talk to the architects, because our town hall is from 6 to 7:30 on the 18th of September. So we're excited about all these things coming up. It's a lot of fun things. But one of these that I wanted to ask, you'll see brought out of utility fund to
We are
our utility fund to our
Tuesday. We're still good still, right?
okay. We'll wait.
This is
All right, thank you.
So no, I appreciate it, and we do have a lot. We have a workshop next Tuesday, and I'm pretty sure all of council will be well involved in questioning. And I mean, because as Conrad said, the 24th is, we have to get this done on the 24th. After that, there's no other options. I will not be here on the 18th, so I apologize. I'll be in Austin. This was just a discussion item, so we will go to item 11.5, Angela.
Discuss and consider approving a resolution of the City Council of the City of McLendon-Chisholm, Texas, to address the negative impact of institutional investors on the single-family housing market in Texas and providing an effective date.
So I will entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of McLendon-Chisholm to address the negative impact of institutional investors on single-family housing.
Sorry. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so with that, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Easter. I talked with the mayor of Rowlett on this, as well as a couple of the other mayors, and the overall goal is to protect the cities within the county with these sorts of resolutions. I know Governor Abbott was a big proponent of these sorts of resolutions, and it's really exactly what it says. It's to protect the market of investors coming in and driving up the prices for rentals, taking away the American dream from a home buyer, but putting the area residents at risk as the market tapers out. So I like the resolution. I've talked with a couple of the other mayors, and they're all going forward with it. Rowlett was the first within Rockwall County. We would be the second, so to keep the tone going. I will answer any questions that I can, but the resolution was pretty spelled out from what I was given guidance on. So I will start with you, Councilmember Easter, if you have anything, sir.
No, I think this is a good idea. I think it's certainly going to benefit our citizens, and I think it's something that we need to kind of watch and also think about who owns these homes and keeping track of the rental market, how many people own these things. It's just, I think it's a good first step toward trying to maintain property values.
That's actually a good point. I didn't even think about the monitoring of what the investors are. Very good. Councilmember Brewer, do you have anything?
Not really. I think this is very good. It kind of puts our feelings out in front for the public and for potential and institutional investors maybe looking at this area. There's a united front with all the local cities. I think they might take a pause at Rockwall, looking at Rockwall.
Another good point. Councilmember Day, do you have anything on this one, sir?
I've always got something to say. it usually is kind of critical. You know, I guess I'm just too Hayekian, and you know what I mean by this, you know, which is, you know, Hayekian. I've read too many of Dr. Hayek's books on economics, including The Road to Serfdom and stuff like this. And so, you know, for the most part, I agree with the sentiment. I understand exactly where the heart of these people are. You know, but on the flip side, I'd have a hard time finding a homeowner that would be upset about having their house price being high. You know, where this is kind of condemning that. So you have to look at it from both sides, the seller and the buyer. You know, a seller coming in does not like the fact that there isn't a large number of single-family homes that are available to them. However, if you're somebody getting a reverse mortgage, you love it because now you have a huge amount of money that you can drive in your retirement years into the future, which is a large number of McLendon-Chisholm people. So I understand exactly where they're coming from. I support the mayor. I support the governor in this sentiment. But again, I always grow really Hayekian, and I start looking and going, yeah, there's still a couple things I would have written differently into these resolutions. But I totally support this, and I will vote for it. And but just, you know, always know that I will always have some type of weird contrarian approach to things.
Well, but no, that's actually a good point, Councilmember Day, because, you know, as, apologize, there's a gnat in my face.
Same one that hit me.
Yes. Okay, so just so we're all not thinking I'm weird. Apologize. That's a good point. You know, as homeowners, we want to protect the value of our home, and I hope this resolution is not taking from that. It's more protecting your real value of your home versus driving it to a point where you may want a higher value. It may be so high based off of what it's really appraised at, you wouldn't even be able to sell it. So it is a two-way street. Why we, you know, I definitely agree with you. The Hayekian of you. Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I'm good on this. He actually stole most of my thunder when he came to the Hayekian theories. And so I wanted to expound a bit more on that, but based on the time element, I want to get us out of here as well. So, but we'll have that discussion between us at some point in time.
Mayor, on this side of the room, we're Hollyans.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, we would probably we would have been out of here by probably 8:30, but Conrad went over time. So we've had the motion, we've had the second. I'll go ahead and just do not a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 And show that unanimous. Show that unanimous. Okay, so that's going to take us to item 11.7, since we've already done 11.6. Angela?
Discuss and consider repealing the motion to make changes on the preliminary plat application, changing 2E and number 15, requiring a water service plan.
I'll entertain a motion on item 11.7.
Yeah, I move that we repeal the motion to make changes on preliminary plat application, changing 2E and number 15, requiring a water service plan.
And a second. And with the second, is there any discussion? If not, I will entertain a vote. No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Show that unanimous as well. That takes us back to the item 10.4 from consent agenda. Angela, if you can read item 10.4 for us.
Consider approving proposed tax rate for the 2024 tax year.
I will entertain a motion on item 10.4 with consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed tax rate for the 2024 tax year.
And a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Yes. So remember, a motion and a second is not an approval. It just allows us to bring it to discussion. For those watching that may not know that. So Conrad. Oh.
Just a parliamentary inquiry with respect to the question, the motion itself. Are we looking at exclusively the proposed tax rate or the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval tax rates as well, or just the proposed tax rate?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. It's required by state law that that the city council approve a proposed tax rate. This is not a proposed property tax rate. This is not a final tax rate. It's a proposed tax rate, and we can't even publish in the newspaper until we get you to approve a proposed tax rate. Back in our June 8th meeting, budget meeting, I'm sorry, my eyes just burning for a second. I don't know why. You all decided that you'd rather have the voter approval rate, which is 3.5% greater than the current rate. But you also noticed that the fiscal year 24, our current year, is 0.09658, and that the proposed rate that we're asking you to approve is 0.096256. So it's less than our current year, not a lot.
Conrad, would you like a recess?
No.
Are you sure? I just want to make sure you're okay, sir.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm not.
I apologize.
My eyes just like burning for some reason.
You want
It's just the fact.
It was a long conversation. I'm okay with taking a 5-minute recess if you just need to check your eye.
Nope, I've already taken my 5-minute recess.
Go ahead.
So this is a rate that we need you to approve. And the budget is based on that and balanced on that. If the council wants to choose a different rate, there's some other rates on here that you can vote for. But this is what you initially, unanimously, back not in a formal vote, but said that you wanted staff to move forward with that voter approval rate. As mentioned earlier, this is put in by state law to allow cities to continue functioning with some sort of CPI involved in it. And so the inflation rate, as you know, the inflation rate has been way more than 3.5%. So the cities went backwards in how much money they had to run their cities. This is just the rate that the state legislature said you can do. That isn't so out of the norm that we require you to have a voter approval rate or even a petition to get an election to going. This is just covering, and lots of times not even covering your CPI rate. And so what you have with there is there'll still be growth and there'll still be valuation. And those two things go into increase in individual property tax rates. So all we're asking for is a proposed, and then on the 24th, we'll ask you to do a final rate. So this is just for state law.
Yeah, and it's required because we can't post anything in the paper, can't do anything. And this is something, again, we can dive into more on the workshop prior to the actual vote on the 24th, which, if I'm, just correct me if I'm wrong, the 24th is, we have to act on the 24th.
Right.
There's not an extra day on this.
And we couldn't even hold our public hearing for the tax rate tonight, which we're required to have, because we hadn't published it, because we didn't bring it to council in time for you to give us a proposed rate. And then with so many days, and this meets at this meeting tonight, and then we'll hold a public hearing for the tax rate next time, and then a final tax rate approval. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll break up our debt service, our interest and sinking account, and our maintenance and operation account rates. And so those three things have to happen next time.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go down the line then real quick. Councilmember Easter, do you have anything with this, sir?
No, sir.
Thank you. Councilmember Brewer?
No, sir.
I want to skip Councilmember Day and go to Mayor Pro Tem because I know Day's got some stuff. So, Mayor Pro Tem, you good? And Councilmember Day, all you.
So I guess I'm trying to, this is my first time going through these things, and I'm trying to meander or work my way through these meanders. And one of the things I realize is that I think I interpreted my previous vote on this differently than the way that the city's interpreting it. I mean, necessarily want this city to start arranging a proposed tax rate of 9 point, I can barely read it because my readers need to be upgraded, 0.96, when we don't have the tax rate even established by the council. So we don't even know, there's a whole lot of unknowns, and I feel like I don't know enough to be able to, I don't even really fully know what we're being asked right now.
Okay, so if you go over, if you just wanted it to stay exactly like you had it current year, no growth involved in it, no appraisal involved in it, that means that your rate, even if your house stayed status quo, if your house stayed status quo, you'd have the same rate. If your house appraised at all, the rate would go down on the no new revenue. So that's no new revenue. Then the city's going backwards on the amount of property tax, and because with CPI, the cost of doing everything is not included, and so for the same goods and services, you're not getting the same amount of money. That's why the council or the state legislature put in the voter approval rate, and so that's 3.5% that I said used to be 8% that you could go up to. They dropped it to some legislatures, the majority of the legislative body thought that was too much for inflation, and so they dropped it to a 3.5% rate 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
So the question is, though, what is the question before us? That's what I'm trying to decide.
The question before is to approve a rate, a property tax rate.
What the proposed tax is, it is basically for the purposes of tonight only. It is what is the maximum tax rate this council will consider imposing on the city. Not that they will impose this, not that it's going to be this, but what is the maximum they will at least sit there and think about. That is all tonight is for.
That is much more decipherable. Now I understand what we're doing. Okay.
Well, it's exactly what I said with proposed versus final. It's a proposed rate. You're just proposing, saying that. No, he can roll his eyes all he wants, and you can laugh.
Technically, I crossed them. My brain.
But he can't do that because I'm telling you exact state law, quoting it. He's telling you Hawley-isms. So, or no, whatever it was. Anyway, so it's something that is just
obviously speaking my native tongue.
just a proposed rate, and next time you do the final rate. State law even requires you to approve the budget, which has that rate developed within the budget before you approve the tax rate. So you have to approve a budget before you even know what your tax rate is, and they require that. That's not tonight. That's next time.
So we need to come up with a hypothetical maximum rate on which you can build this entire budget. And then we're going to look at the budget later on and then assess whether or not those conclusions made sense based upon your projection.
Not at all. And it's not hypothetical because we worked out these numbers based on, these are specific mathematical equations that figured out these numbers based on our current tax rate. So based on our current tax rate and what everything's going on, this is the actual worked out tax rate that goes to 3.5%. And you figured that out and you say, okay, that's what we feel good about. We don't want to tax our residents. We want to keep them. We don't want to excessively tax them. We're going to meet what the state legislature has asked us to do, or to not go to a vote. And this is the rate that we're doing. So it's not hypothetical. It's an actual worked out rate. It goes to thousandths of a percentage or whatever.
It's hypothetical in the sense of it technically doesn't
mean anything.
It doesn't have to be that exact rate. So it is hypothetical in that sense.
This actually could have, we could have chosen not to go to 3.5. We could have chosen 3 or 2.5 and generated a different rate. Am I correct on that?
Good.
And we could have accepted that at the last meeting. But instead, we just fell at the max percentage increase based on CPI.
No, based on the 3.5 that they allowed.
Based on 3.5. What was the rate of inflation last year? Do we have a number on that?
Well, that's
900%.
well, and that's You know, and that question is.
I'm asking this question for, I'm very serious about this, Don.
That's only a rough math for you by now.
It is definitely more than 3.5, and it is a valid question because it does show that the max isn't even suffice sometimes to run. You know, one thing I've learned as a council member in a short time as mayor is, you know, people want a lot of things for the city to get done on the least amount of money that they have to pay in for those things to get done, and that can put a crutch for a city to operate. There are things that we as a council and staff working hard on this can be proud about with, you know, we're at the bottom of the list on a lot of things as far as things go. And I can say this is now my third budget with Mayor Pro Tem, and if there's a person that I know that will go through this now knowing Councilmember Day is probably a little over Mayor Pro Tem on it. But I know where Mayor Pro Tem goes with these things, right? You know, I have heard him over and over and over again demand more each time from staff on making sure we're a balanced budget. You know, I know the fire department has stuff, and I know we're going to dive into this a lot on the 17th, where the fire chief is going to probably have a 25-minute speech. But there are things that are very important to the budget. There are very important things. Do you have that number? What is that number?
The last year is 3.4%, based upon the CPI.
Based upon the CPI. So we would be right in line with the inflation rate of 2023 with the 3.5. And again, proposed that we will again be able to talk with more on the 17th. The proposal is something that allows us to keep moving forward. And I learned a lot at TML. There's a timeline. We cannot go past the 24th. So we have to figure this out at that workshop on the 17th, so that we can present a true budget on the 24th to vote on and pass. So again, this is a proposed. If there's any other questions, you know, direct them to Conrad or city attorney. But if not, then we can look to move this to a vote so we can move on down to comments from the council.
Sir, is there a motion on the table currently?
I believe we did have a motion and a second. And the motion was by Mr. Brewer, I believe, and the second Eastern. Okay. So if there's no other further discussion, then we can take this to a vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Sorry.
You're a nay? Okay.
I'm kind of a nay.
Okay, so we have 2 ayes, 2 nays. I will be a yay, so that will show approved on the tie break. Just to double check me, did we hit all the items? Because I know I moved them around. We did? Okay. So I had them all checked off. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so that will take us to council members' reports and announcements or comments. Councilmember Easter, do you have anything, sir?
I've got nothing.
Councilmember Brewer?
We're going into meeting number 3 of the Home Rule Commission tomorrow. It'll start at 6:30. We'll work on the microphone situation. We do have 2, but you're right, as towards the evening, later in the evening, people were getting a little tired, but we'll try to do a better job for you there. And then it was mentioned about the next town hall, which is on the 18th. The format that I envisioned was that they would the architects would present do their presentation, take questions on that, and then we leave a little bit of time if the public has questions on anything else. We may not know all the answers at that point, but we're certainly there to listen. So, or I'll be there for sure.
So for me, for announcements, I just want to make sure that I speak to Councilmember Easter and my Mayor Pro Tem. I wanted to tell them thank you. I know y'all work hard on water stuff, and with that comes hard meetings, sometimes with myself. But I just wanted to make sure that I publicly acknowledge you guys and the hard work that you do, but also apologize. And let me just please finish. I want to apologize because when we do get heated, I love that we're able to still maintain our decorum and respect, and we're able to still come out here and conduct business as fine gentlemen. And I just wanted to tell you, I appreciate you, Councilmember Easter and my Mayor Pro Tem. I can't ask for a finer Mayor Pro Tem as far as I'm concerned. He pushes me to be a better mayor, and you can't ask for a better Mayor Pro Tem when it comes to something like that. I know y'all want to say something, but I'm going to unfortunately not let you just yet. I also want to make sure that Councilmember Day speaks on the shirt he's wearing tonight when it does go to him. No, and I mean that because it's a very touching part for him. And so before we go to him, I apologize, Councilmember Easter, if you were going to say something.
No, there's no need to apologize. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you. And none of this is easy. We do the best we can, and reasonable minds may reach different decisions, but that's part of the game up here. So it's all good.
I just wanted you to hear it from me in front of the people, because you do matter. You're a good council member, and I'm glad you're on our dais, and I appreciate you. And now it's your turn.
So I actually don't know the person personally. Maybe you do know the person, or you know the person that's got. So Chief, do you mind? Chief, would you go ahead and introduce the name of the person so that and let her know that she's being mentioned at this meeting, and then you can use me as the model for your shirt.
So the recipient of this year's funds is actually a young lady by name Wendy Stambaugh, if I'm not mistaken. She is a Heath High School teacher, track coach. She's unfortunately dealing with cancer that very young, bright young lady, early 40s if I'm not mistaken. This has taken over her life, unfortunately. Beautiful young family, kiddos. So she is the recipient. So 4 of the 5 agencies this year got together. That's why the shirt says together. There's 4 agencies, and as Councilmember Day stands up, he'll model that you'll see Roy City, Heath, McLendon-Chisholm, and Rockwell Fire Department, all the players when it comes to all the funds that all the departments receive will go to the Stambaugh family.
And the price of those shirts, if you can,
$25.
And they are available at our fire station as well as these participating stations?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And before I get this back to Councilmember Day, I have spoke with Mr. Stambaugh on the phone, and he is very appreciative. He did allow us permission to speak names. I have only corresponded with Wendy Stambaugh through Messenger. But I can tell you my prayers go to her. I immediately bought 2 shirts, and I was proud to see Councilmember Day. And with that being said, our next council meeting, if the rest of the council and staff has an opportunity to go to the fire station and pick up a shirt, I would love to see us in a unified front at the next council meeting wearing these shirts, which means Councilmember Brewer will not be able to wear a blazer. But I think that shows something strong, that we are supporting a member of our community, yes, McLendon-Chisholm, where, as the chief said. So back to you, Councilmember Day. And again, y'all are not pressured to do that, but I would love to see that.
I'm challenging all of you.
Yeah, and the bravery of this woman to go through it. You know, as a cancer survivor myself, recently went through a terrible and very life-threatening form of kidney cancer. most kidney cancers are not life-threatening. Mine unfortunately was. So I had to move very quickly. I got that diagnosis, and I was told that I didn't have long to live. And my response wasn't to go and tell the community, hey, help me out. I'm so proud that she's got out there raising awareness, and we have the opportunity to buy these shirts. Instead, I went into my shell, that kind of thing. We're like, okay, this is how it's going to go. And the terror of going through this stuff, a lot of people don't understand. So, raising awareness and support for people that are going through a tremendous hardship where they don't know if they're going to get through it. They got little kids. I had little kids. I still have little kids. My son is 7 years old, still running around the house. The terror of getting a cancer diagnosis. A lot of people, you don't know it until it happens to you. And I can tell you, it's like getting hit by lightning when it occurs. And so she has my deepest sympathies. If you ever have a question or a concern, if you're watching this, Wendy, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share my own experiences. I went through the nastiest chemotherapy. My hair fell out and the whole thing. I used to joke all the time. I said, a year ago I could have sat on this dais and fit in a room with all. Especially with Mr. McLendon, who's the perfectly shaved dome. Well, second, we got co-domes over here. So anyways, when the story hit, I saw the mayor's story. It was very touching, and I immediately said I need to get a shirt. And then I realized the council meeting was today, and I said, shoot, I bet you they're all wearing shirts today. So I went and I reached out to the chief, and he sold me a shirt today. But for $25, you can make a difference in this woman's life, and I highly recommend that you do so.
Thank you, Councilmember Day, and I am proud to know that you're still with us and you fought the fight, sir. I appreciate that.
Oh, one more thing, though.
Of course.
Edwards Road is a disaster again.
And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything?
Of course on that. Yeah. It will always be so. We're working on it. Thanks for all the good words. And we all have a passion, water committee personnel, and then the mayor, and we always go toe to toe with one another. But once we leave that room, it's all good as far as I'm concerned, and all to be forgotten in terms of adversities, if there are any. To start with, we just, again, we have passion. We're very passionate about what we argue for, and that's just part of how the sausage is made when it comes to government. So it really doesn't impact me other than reinforces my sense that the people that I work with on this dais are just great people to start with. Even if I have a difference of opinion, and the fact that we can walk away, slap each other on the back, and go on to other issues, because there's a hell of many more issues than just water, and water shouldn't divide us. In terms of current events, obviously I regress back to water. I think Michael and I are going to be working on trying to put together some of the parties and maybe get some water provisions for next summer. I don't know if that's going to happen. We tried for this summer and for next summer, reaching out to High Point specifically, and we almost engineered something that did not happen. But we've got some contacts that we're going to be pursuing here this week, and I'm hoping that by next week it'll come to fruition. We'll at least have the conversation. In great part, Mary Smith up in Rockwell has been a focus of our attention, and hopefully we'll be able to convince her otherwise, at least for next summer, to get some relief. And if we can do that, then ojalá, things will be much better for all of us in the community. We'll see how that works out.
Fire Chief, do you have anything, sir? For those that couldn't hear, Fire Chief responded just saying that if you have any questions, well, I just want to make sure that people know what you said, that he's just basically saying if you have any questions from council members and myself, to send them to him for those that were watching. Anything from the staff? If not, then it is 9:29. We are adjourned.